Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel, and today is going to be my summer reading recap. Total of all of the books I read this summer, I read, I believe 27, and so this is going to be my recap and ranking of all of the books that I read this summer. Once again, you have an unusual angle of me because this past Friday I tripped at a cross-country meet and twisted my ankle, and the trainer said I have to keep it iced and not put pressure on it. So I figured standing around for 20 to 30 minutes filming this video would likely violate what they told me to do. So you're gonna see me from this angle during this video. But without further ado, let's get right into the rankings. All right, in 27th place is going to be White Sand. I talked about this as well as during my Cosmere book rankings, so if you want to see that and see even more of my full thoughts on White Sand, you can check it out there. But I just never fell in love with White Sand. Even books that I don't like initially, a lot of times I do end up falling in love with them, but not with White Sand. I did not like how Sanderson's writing style came across in the graphic novel format, and while I did enjoy the characters, as the character depth increased across as the books went on, it just never captured me the way that his other works did, and especially in a summer that was filled with Sanderson and Pratchett, who are two of my favorite authors. It just a lackluster book just did not cut it in a summer where pretty much every book I read was phenomenal. And once again, another thing was its uninteresting magic system, especially compared to how amazing Allomancy and Search Binding is. I just didn't enjoy Sandmaster, and it kind of brought down my enjoyment of the book quite a bit. Alright, in 26th place is Eric. Let me pull it up. It was fine. Eric is one of my least favorite Discworld novels, and that's mostly because, I mean, it's short and there's not a lot of substance to it. It just kind of feels like we have like 3 or 4 disconnected settings and character arcs and stories that kind of put into this quite short volume. Rincewind is quite weak in this novel. The titular protagonist, Eric, is largely uninteresting. It was fine. There was nothing to really love, but there's nothing really super bad about this book. It's a pretty average Discworld book that, kept me entertained for the 120 pages that it has, but not something that I'm super looking forward to checking out again anytime soon. Alright, in 25th place is The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents. And I really, at this point, Eric and White Sand, I didn't particularly enjoy. But coming here for The Amazing Maurice and His Educated Rodents, I actually really like this book. This was my first of the Discworld young adult novels that I read, and it was just a lot of fun. Maurice is a hilarious protagonist. The rats are... they add just the different characters for them, the kind of moral dilemmas that they go through as they're trying to figure out who they are was super entertaining to see, and it was just really a fun, I wouldn't say lighthearted, but because it really isn't, but it was just a fun Discworld novel. It definitely subverted my expectations of what the YA novels were going to be. Because I did not expect it to. It really feels like his adult novels, with a slight toned-down violence. But even for Amazing Maurice, there was quite a bit of violence in there that I was surprised for, like I said, a quote-unquote young adult novel. But it was just a really fun time, and I just had a blast. This was super enjoyable. Alright, then in 24th place is going to be The Color of Magic. This is the very first Discworld novel, and the reason it ranks so low is mainly just because, despite being quite funny and has Pratchett's signature comedy and style, it didn't feel like a Discworld novel. There's a lot of elements here that, sure, I recognize them from later Discworld novels, Ankh-Morpork, The Patrician, Rincewind, Death, the City Watch, all of that is there, and you can see it in this first book, but it doesn't act like it does in the later books. It doesn't feel necessarily like a Discworld novel, and that's what brought it down for me. It still is a hilarious book by Pratchett that I really enjoyed reading, but it was the non-Discworld elements that still had the veneer of Discworld that made me enjoy it less than I might have otherwise. In 23rd place is the second Discworld book, immediately following The Color of Magic, The Light Fantastic. And I enjoyed it quite a bit more than The Color of Magic, mostly because The Light Fantastic is where we get to the Light Fantastic is where we get to, like, the actual Discworld elements. Death feels like Death. The Four Horsemen feel like the Four Horsemen we come to see. And a lot of the elements feel more like what we experience in the other Discworld books. Like, I wouldn't consider Color of Magic a true Discworld book. It doesn't feel like that. But The Light Fantastic definitely does. It also feels less scattershot. The Color of Magic, you kind of the Rincewind and Two Flower just kind of bounce from place to place randomly, and at least in the Light Fantastic, it seems like there's a much more focused goal, and the story isn't just random this way, like it is in The Color of Magic. It feels much more focused on what the actual end goal of the story is. But still, it's one of the weaker Discworld novels I didn't enjoy as much as the rest of the series. All right, and in 22nd place is going to be The Last Hero by Terry Pratchett. The Last Hero. This is one of the Wizards book in Discworld, and the main reason, the story is not bad, but the main reason I ranked it so low is just there isn't a lot of it, despite the really interesting interactions between Captain Carrot and the Librarian and Leonard of Quirm and Rincewind, which is just so much fun, and all of the interesting interactions with Conan and up on the Home of the Gods. It's just it's a really funny book, and the illustrations make it even funnier. The illustrations absolutely elevate this book, but it's quite short. Very similar to Eric, there's not a lot here, and it kind of, for me at least, it misses this. Yeah, it has like these, well, everyone in the world is going to die. It has those stakes in this novel, but it doesn't feel that way like you get with some of the novels. It's too abstract. It's played too much for laughs to take it seriously, and that kind of brings down my enjoyment of it. But it's still a really fun and really funny book that I definitely had a really awesome time with. All right, and in 21st is going to be We Free Men. This is the first Tiffany Aching novel in Discworld, and it was just a lot of fun. I really enjoyed meeting the Knack and MacFeagle. They just added so much humor to the novel. I thought the setting that Terry Pratchett the picture of Terry Pratchett painted, the setting of the Queen's world of Fairyland and the world of dreams, and how the drones and the dreams can be controlled not only by the Queen but also Tiffany, made for such a unique setting, and there was so much potential that Terry Pratchett took full advantage of in this book. I enjoyed seeing Tiffany Aching, just a little girl, just a 9-year-old girl, do what she was able to do. And of course, the return of Granny Weatherwax, who is one of my favorite Discworld characters. It was just such a fun book all throughout. All right, and starting in the top 20, we're going to be having Interesting Times. This is the 5th, I think, Rincewind book, and it was a lot of fun. I enjoyed getting to see the Agetan Empire. I enjoyed Conan the Barbarian and all of his and the Silverhorde's antics throughout the story, and kind of a theme for the Wizards books is they're just fun. They're just fun and they're funny. Especially the early ones, may not have the kind of quality that I love about the other Discworld books, especially the City Watch books. But it's just such a fun time. Rincewind is such a fun character that I just can't help but enjoy the novels, even if they aren't, top tier of Discworld. They're just books that are enjoyable to read, and that I will that, I mean, for the time that you're reading them, are just so enjoyable, and that's what I felt with the Aegean Empire. Getting to see Two Flower again, and then how Rincewind successfully successfully defeats Mr. Hong, and despite that, he gets none of the credit, and just the familiar story that is just so enjoyable to read again and again and again. Alright, and in 19th place is going to be Sorcery. This is the third Discworld book. It's actually the book that Terry Pratchett recommends you start Discworld with. And once again, it's kind of mirroring my thoughts for the Interesting Times. It's just fun. It's just a fun and funny book. Getting the sorcerer, how Rincewind defeats the sorcerer, half breaking a sock, and just the entire time, Rincewind, who's so out of his depth, he's not a great wizard. He isn't a wizard. He's barely a wizard. And now suddenly these amazing powers are clashing, and it's just fun. It's kind of the same thing. It's just a fun book. All right, and in 18th place is going to be A Hat Full of Sky. This is the second Tiffany Aching novel, and as I talked about during my weekly updates, the Tiffany Aching novels just kept getting better and better and better as we went through the series, and A Hat Full of Sky is no exception. I really enjoyed it. Getting to see again the witches, just like the witch community that we didn't get to see in We Free Men and haven't seen since Carb Jugulum. In addition to that, getting to see how witches are trained and the huge variety and all the different quirks and things different about each of the witches. Hiver is definitely my least favorite. It's probably my second least favorite villain of all of the Tiffany Aching novels. The Queen from the original We Free Men is definitely my least favorite, but the Hiver was okay. It was a good antagonist, but moreover, it helped Tiffany grow into her own, to connect with Granny Weatherwax and to start to become the witch that she needs to be by the time we get to the Shepherd's Crown. And so that was the enjoyable thing, to see her start to grow and develop and mature throughout her journey. That was probably, for me, that and getting to see the new witches were the highlights of A Hat Full of Sky. All right, and in 17th place, we have Mistborn Secret History. Mistborn Secret History was okay. The main draw for me for the book was the background lore, the cosmeric implications of the novel. Kelsier is not necessarily my favorite character, and so I didn't necessarily need more of his POV, but getting to see what's happening with the Irae, what's happening with Ruin and Preservation, exactly how, and a little bit more of how shards work, because in the original Mistborn series, yes, there's Cosmere stuff, but we don't understand it yet, and Sanderson doesn't explain it necessarily to us. In Mistborn Secret History, for me at least, acts as a way for Sanderson to go back in and tell us all of these things that were going on in the background that he didn't know yet, and we definitely didn't notice. We definitely didn't know yet when he wrote those books. To kind of further the lore of the Cosmere and what's happening through the Mistborn, the original Mistborn trilogy, because there's a lot cosmerically that's happening during that trilogy that we didn't know about, and so Mistborn Secret History was amazing for me, just so that we could have those Cosmere lore implications. All right, and then at 16th, we have Wintersmith. This is the third Tiffany Aching novel, and I really enjoyed it. They just kept getting better, and here in Wintersmith, getting to see more of how the witch is trained. That started in A Hat Full of Sky, but even more now we're with Miss Treason. We see Nanny Ogg for a little bit, and especially when she's talking with some of the other youth witches like Patricia and all of the other youth. It's like I said, the diversity of the witches, and especially their differences to the wizards, is one of my favorite parts of the witches novels, and it's here again in the Tiffany Aching series, and Wintersmith further expands on that. Getting to see Tiffany have to come to the realization that her actions have consequences, because her actions in the first two books, the conflict wasn't necessarily her fault. She did go picking a fight in We Free Men, but that fight kind of was picked for her when the queen kidnapped her brother. But here, she made a mistake. She has to own up to her mistake, and she has to take responsibility. And seeing Tiffany mature through the series is one of my favorite parts of it. And that it was, for me, was the highlight of Wintersmith, is seeing how she's maturing, how she's growing older, and how she's learning to take responsibility for her actions. All right, and then in 15th place is going to be The Truth. This is the second Industrial Revolution novel, and as I talked about in my initial review, The Truth kind of feels like the proto Going Postal. Going Postal is one of my favorite Discworld novels, and The Truth seems like Terry Pratchett's precursor to it. DeWard is very similar to Moist von Lipwig. The competition between Moist and the Grand Trunk is very similar to how in The Truth, DeWard and his newspaper are competing against the Inquirer. The Grand Conspiracy about Ventinari seems very similar to the Grand Conspiracy about the Trunk, and so it honestly feels like The Truth was The Truth was what Terry Pratchett was writing before he understood well enough about Discworld and how to write. I mean, some of the later books are so good. How to write Discworld properly. Like, he knew how to write it well at that point, but compared to what Going Postal is, this was him practicing. This was him testing out ideas, so Going Postal could be so good. And, I mean, to be fair, The Truth is great. The antagonists are super funny, and I enjoyed all of their scenes together. But honestly, the whole book feels kind of like a lesser version of Going Postal, which kind of brought down my opinion, my enjoyment of it a little bit, but it was still a really great time. And then in 14th, we have I Shall Wear Midnight, which is the fourth Tiffany Aching novel. And this is some of the most stressed I've been in the Tiffany Aching novel. This is the most stressed I've been in the Tiffany Aching novel, even with a arguably bigger conflict in the next novel. I was on the edge of my seat the entire time I was reading this book, and wow, was it amazing. Seeing as Tiffany, so Tiffany in this book is about the same age as me. She's 1 year younger, and then about the same age as all of my classmates. And so getting to see Terry Pratchett write teenagers so well throughout this book was enjoyable, to see how well he was able to capture what it's like to be a teenager and dealing with, kind of your first stressful situations, while simultaneously dealing with all of the nonsense that comes with being an adolescent. That was enjoyable to me. That was super enjoyable for me. And as Tiffany is forced to mature throughout this novel and become the witch that the Chalk needs as we're coming into the Shepherd's Crown, was super exciting to read. And then the Charred Man and the Burning Man was such a terrifying antagonist because it feels so personal. In the way that none of the other antagonists quite are. Wintersmith maybe, but especially the Charred Man is so personal in this novel about his hatred for Tiffany that, wow, this was such an amazing book. I loved it so much. All right, and then in 13th place is Half a King by Joe Abercrombie. I don't have the book, but I really liked Half a King. It was this was my first experience with Abercrombie. I wanted to read his YA series before I jumped into the first Law trilogy, and man, his characters are so good. Because sure, after reading Malazan, there are morally ambiguous characters in that book, but you can generally tell who's good and who's evil. Not so much in Half a King. There are characters who do horrible things, for the right reasons, or at least in their opinion, the right reasons. And there are quote unquote good people and bad people on both sides. And that's what made this book so enjoyable, was the characters. Seldom have I read characters as great as Joe Abercrombie's, and wow, it just elevated the reading experience for me so much, how well his characters were written and developed. The plot was fine. It was fairly predictable. I've read a lot of stories very similar where he's dethroned and he has to come back to get revenge on his family member who wronged him. But it was the characters that elevated the story for me, the conflicts, and even as we see at the very end of that book where the characters that we have been following, the heroes, are not as heroic as we thought it's just the characters elevated the Half a King for me so much. It makes me even more excited to pick up the Blade itself, which is sitting over there on my shelf. All right, and then in 12th place is going to be Skyward, the first book of Brandon Sanderson's Defiant series, and I really enjoyed it for two reasons. Number one, the action. It was just the fighter pilots, and the combat and action in this book was super exciting. In addition to that, I think Sanderson writes very good, I guess, sci-fi, yes, very good sci-fi action, and I really enjoyed that about, I really enjoyed that about Skyward. Just the combat and the action in this book were super exciting, and kept me on the edge of my seat in the same way that the best of Mistborn and Stormlight is able to do in their super climactic scenes. That was a highlight for me in this book. In addition to that, I love the characters. As I mentioned, with how well Pratchett wrote Tiffany Aching, who is a teenager, a 16-year-old in I Shall Wear Midnight. The characters act like high schoolers because they are high schoolers. They're 17, they're 16, 17, 18, I'm pretty sure. And so seeing how well Sanderson is able to write this demographic, and yes, they come out as obnoxious or kind of strange at times and a little bit annoying, but especially as someone who is that age and understand, well, that's just kind of how that works. That was kind of that's one of the best parts of Skyward, is how good Sanderson was able to write characters of that age. I'm super excited to check out the other two. 3 sequels at this point. Hello everyone. All right, in 11th place is going to be The Shepherd's Crown. This is the last Discworld novel and the 5th Tiffany Aching novel, and wow, I really enjoyed it. It was the best Tiffany Aching novel, particularly for it's just so many reasons. The death of Granny Weatherwax in the beginning, and just the reactions and how the disc reacts to the death of such an influential figure. I really enjoyed seeing how impactful she was, and seeing, it was the most connected we've seen the disc as characters from so many different series. The Time Monks from the Death series, the Wizards from the Rincewind series, and just all of these characters who were impacted in a way by the death of Granny Weatherwax. In addition, seeing the witches work together after seeing so much conflict between them for the past 4 books, and even in the original witches novels, seeing them all come together to tackle this major threat, seeing Tiffany truly grow into her own. Joffrey was a really fun side character, and really the Shepherd's Crown, I think, ended Discworld on such a high note as the last Discworld novel. All right, and then in 10th place, so top 10, we have, starting off with, is Arcanum Unbound. The reason it's here is just, it's a really awesome collection of Cosmere stories. If you want to see, I'm not going to go into it at depth here. If you want to see my thoughts on the novellas featured in Arcanum Unbound, go and check out my review of them on my channel. The Brandon Sanderson novellas ranked. Published that about a month ago. So if you want to see my thoughts on Arcanum Unbound, my true thoughts on Arcanum Unbound, you can go see them there. And then next we have The Sunlit Man. The action and adventure in The Sunlit Man in 9th place, it was exciting. It was a mix between the action, which, because of how Nomad can't actually physically harm his attackers, the creative solutions he comes up with in order to still fight them was a lot of fun for me. The high-paced, high-stakes, kind of adrenaline-filled hunt throughout the entire story also gave it such a sense of urgency and an extra weight to all of the fights that they get into. But really, for me, it was this technological advancements, the science, and the understanding of the Cosmere from a future age that really sold it for me. I enjoyed seeing how magic and how Sanderson's magic and real world science and technological innovation functioned and worked in this future era. And that was probably the highlight of Summit Man for me. And then in 8th, we have Dawnshard, another Sanderson book. You'll see a lot of them here in the top 10. Highly recommend Dawnshard. For how short it was, it still managed to not only pack the same technological advancements and innovations that I talked about for the Summit Man, but also some of my favorite characters in the Stormlight Archive, like Lopen and the Horn Eaters, and it was just. And it was a sailing story, and as someone who really likes sailing and pirate and boat stories, that was also super enjoyable for me. Getting to see more about the Dawnshards, which I first encountered them in the Summit Man, and then also getting introduced to the Sleepless. It was just such a fun adventure that ironically had so many Cosmere implications. Despite, for me, the biggest draw being just how much of just like a fun adventure story it was, especially a fun adventure story, kind of like downtime between how heady Oathbringer and Rhythm of War were. That definitely gave it an edge for me. All right, and then 7th place is going to be Unseen Academicals, the last Wizards book in Discworld, and it was so much fun. It was the first Wizard book that doesn't super heavily focus on Rincewind. He's not a major character. He's kind of just a side character here. But it truly, for me, the last 3 kind of major books of Discworld, Raising Steam, Unseen Academicals, and Snuff, kind of show Pratchett's ability to take Discworld and make it something more. Kind of what he was able to comment on and the characters he was able to make, he was able to use in the world, how he was able to use the world in the final couple books was phenomenal. And Unseen Academical is even more so, kind of showing how Ankh-Morpork, as it's moving into the Industrial Revolution, as it's moving into the future, was able to, how it changed, how it advanced, how it grew, and how the Wizards interacted with that was super interesting. In addition, tons of fun characters from the Wizards themselves, also the kitchen staff and the football players that also interacted. It was just, overall, it mixed the seriousness and amazing commentary that Pratchett's able to bring, while also managing to be such a fun time and give us more experiences with the characters that we love. All right, and then Oathbringer. I'm going to keep this one light because, once again, I have a full review of Oathbringer on my channel, but I really enjoyed Oathbringer. It was the first time we were able to finally have the amount of radiance that we had, in them trying to truly understand how their powers worked. In addition to that, it has one of the best climaxes in the entire series, which even further elevated how good the book was for me. It was brought down for me for a weaker middle section, but overall, it was just such an amazing time. I enjoyed, especially those the beginning and middle. I enjoyed so much about Oathbringer. But like I said, if you want to see my full thoughts on the book, check out the review on my channel. In 5th place, top 5, very similar vein to Oathbringer, Rhythm of War. I'm not going to go into it because I have a full review of Rhythm of War on my channel. So if you want to read Rhythm of War, if you want to see my true thoughts on Rhythm of War, go check it out there. But the reason it ranks above Oathbringer is there's very few parts that I disliked about Rhythm of War. The entire sequence during the season of Raithu was phenomenal, and I think that the characters are at their best in this, or not at their best. I like Words of Radiance better for quite a few characters, but there's so many characters who are at their best in Rhythm of War. It's really only brought down by weaker flashbacks that I think kind of dock points and bring it below Words of Radiance for me. But like I said, go check out the full review on my channel. But Rhythm of War was amazing. And then in 4th place is Yumi and the Nightmare Painter. it was just so much. And Yumi and the Nightmare Painter was kind of scaled back for me, at least, the stakes of the story, especially coming after Rhythm of War and Oathbringer, where the stakes were so high. Yumi is lower. Yeah, there's still some pretty intense stakes. There's some pretty big stakes, but it just felt more down to earth, more fun. I love the interactions of how Yumi and Painter interact with each other's worlds and start to discover new and more interesting new things and new experiences. I do think, and in addition to that, I love the magic, especially relating to art and how it was used to whether summon spirits on Yumi's side or to dispel the nightmares on Painter's side. In addition to that, I like the more quote unquote widely accessible magic that Painter's side experienced, where it was just a job, and I enjoyed that quite a bit. In addition to that, the setting was great. I loved Yumi and the Nightmare Painter setting, both of them. I thought, especially Painter's, I thought it was such a unique and interesting setting to set the story, and I think it really elevated what Sanderson was telling there. And then top three, we're going to start with Tress of the Emerald Sea. Wow, I love this book. It is my favorite of the Secret Projects. It's my favorite Cosmere. It's my second favorite Cosmere novel behind Words of Radiance, and it was just so much fun. It was so cute. Once again, like I said, with Dawn Shard, I love pirates, and Tress is a pirate story, and I just enjoyed that so much. I really loved all the characters and their interactions. I thought that the spores were such an interesting. So interesting how they'll be used in how Sanderson will use them in the Cosmere in the future. In addition to that, I love the technological innovation and how smart Tress is. The Sorceress getting to see more of the Elantrans, and this time in a different, more antagonistic context, was super exciting for me, because that's before I read Mistborn Secret History. Was super exciting for me, and overall, it was just such a cute story that I enjoyed all the way through. Hoid's narration was amazing, and I can't recommend it enough. It is just it's the best. It's so much fun. And then in second place is going to be The Lost Continent. This is the second to last Wizards novel, and wow. After a very lackluster start, in my opinion, to the Wizards series, especially compared to how phenomenal the start for Death and the Watch series was, The Lost Continent was amazing. It just had everything that I loved about Discworld, about the Wizards novels. Rincewind and his misadventures across 4X was so much fun. I think Australia is a perfect setting to be in Discworld, Australia-esque is a perfect setting for Discworld. I loved seeing the other magic school and how what arose between the Unseen University and the 4X University. In addition to that, the B plot with the wizards on the island was hilarious. Their interactions with the God of Evolution were so much fun, and pretty much every part of this book was amazing for me. It was, when I think of a hilarious Wizards adventure, or hilarious just one-off Discworld adventure, The Last Continent is what comes to mind. It is everything I hoped it would be, and even more. And here we are at number one, and it is going to be What If 2 by Randall Munroe. Its predecessor, What If 1, is still my second favorite book of all time, just behind The Lord of the Rings. And this is the same book, just different stories, different questions. Like I said, I talked about What If 2 in my review of the Randall Munroe collection, so if you want to see my full thoughts. But What If 2 is in my opinion, the perfect execution of what Randall Munroe was trying to write. It is a bunch of crazy hypothetical questions answered with real-world science, with cute infographics, hilarious footnotes, and just humor throughout the entire thing. It's informative, it's funny, it is everything that everything that you would hope from seeing the title and seeing the description, you would hoped it would be, and even more. There is no critiques that I can level at What If 2, except for maybe it's too short, and he should have included more scenarios. This is phenomenal, and I recommend everyone who, if you like science, if you like humor, I recommend you read What If 2, especially if you like Discworld, because it has the same Discworldian humor that Pratchett puts into his books, but this time focused at real-world science. All right, and that's the list. Thank you guys so much for watching. This has been this 10 week 11 video series has been so much fun to put together. Just kind of giving my thoughts of all of these books as I've been reading them, and being able to give shorter synopsis reviews of some of these books, of some books that maybe I wouldn't dedicate the time and energy to a full-length review, because either they're too short, like with Eric here, or I just don't have the time. So this was such a fun concept, and hopefully I will be doing monthly recap. I'll try to do some sort of recap throughout the year, maybe per quarter or per month. I'm not sure, but I really enjoyed doing the series, and I hope you guys did as well. Finally, all the links to buy these books will be down in the description. I've been telling you that, teasing you with that for all in the descriptions for all of my previous videos. But if you want to purchase any of the books that I talked about here, the links to do so will be in the description. Thank you guys so much for watching all summer, and if you liked the video and want to see more content, like and subscribe, and I can't wait to see you next time. Bye.